Before we begin today's episode of Potterless, I wanted to make an announcement for our good friends over at Spirits Podcast. So if you've listened to the episodes of Potterless that exist, you're probably very familiar with Spirits Podcast. Amanda's been on the show a couple times, Julie's been on the show, their editor Eric is going to be in a future episode. It's basically like Drunk History, but about mythology and way nerdier. It's a good time. And they are currently doing a pre-order for shirts and pins that they're offering, which are awesome. They are really cool designs, they look fantastic, and the pre-order is ending this Thursday, the first Thursday of August, and I just wanted to give a little announcement in case you guys, first off, didn't know about Spirits or didn't know that they're doing a little pre-order, because they're a lovely podcast, they're doing a lovely pre-order, and I just thought I should spread the news because they've been so nice to me, and they helped me make Potterless what it is, so this is the least I can do to thank them. Speaking of shirts, we're going to make ones for Potterless in the near future. I'm just trying to figure out if the best means to do so are through Patreon or through a pre-order. Still got to figure that out, but stay tuned, because Wizard On shirts are going to happen, and they're going to be fantastic. And of course, a big shout out to our producer level patrons, Leanne Davis, Griffin Meckelberg, Aaron Johnson, Erica and Calvin Bauer, Michael Vanderslice, and Sadie Bear, who always get the larger portion of the wishbone. And if you guys want to support Patreon for bonus content, go to patreon.com/Potterless. If not, no big deal. But without further ado, let's get into this upcoming episode of Potterless that covers chapters 27 through 30 of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, starring Melissa Anelli, New York Times bestselling author of Harry History and the co-host of the Pottercast podcast. Hello, Internet, and welcome back to another episode of Potterless, the tale of a grown man reading Harry Potter for the first time. We are back with Melissa Anelli, New York Times bestseller and CEO of Mischief Management, to discuss chapters 27 through 30 of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Melissa, are you ready to continue?
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right, let's get right into it. So chapter 27, Padfoot returns, which, first note, Sirius is back. I'm excited about it.
You like Sirius. You're a big Sirius
I love
fan.
him. I mean, he's Gary Oldman. How could you not? So,
Sure, yeah.
No, Sirius is great. I'm a big fan. All the kids are asking about the lake stuff. And, of course, Ron, as he does, is embellishing the story more and more every single time he tells it. Apparently, there's some girl named Padma Patil. So we're back to alliteration names. We've gone full circle. She has a crush on Ron now that he's getting attention. So she seems very shallow and doesn't have his best interests.
Well, they're 14. At 14, I had my head turned too.
So Hermione's been on edge because people are teasing her for being Crumb's choice, which I don't get because he's Victor fucking Crumb.
Well, they all wish it was them. So,
how would you tease? You wouldn't tease. I don't know.
You've never been a girl in high school, have you?
I have not.
Yeah.
I went to an all-boys high school, so there was no teasing at all. It was just not a lot of gossip going on in an all-boys school.
Yeah, no, but girls, jealousy presents in ugly ways, especially, and I know it happens with boys too, but with girls, yeah, girls can be bad to girls.
Sure.
It's truth.
It sucks. Hermione yells at Ron one of the times he embellishes the story to stop doing that, and that gets him to immediately stop doing it, and he doesn't do it anymore, which is beautiful. Sirius gives a letter back to Harry and gives him a location outside of Hogsmeade of where to meet him. So the squad goes to Potions class, and in Potions class, Malfoy, Crabbe, Goyle, and Pansy Parkinson, who is described as having a pug face, those four, plus a gaggle of other Slytherin girls, are standing outside the classroom snickering. And of course, they have a Read a Skeeter article from Witch Weekly that paints Harry Potter and Hermione as a couple, and how Harry is heartbroken now that Crumb and Hermione are becoming an item.
Oh, I hate tabloids.
So bad. So bad. So the article plays up the Crumb angle and his affections for Hermione, and Pansy is quoted as saying that Hermione is, quote, really ugly, and that she must have been using a love potion on Victor Crumb, which is horribly rude to say. So mean. I don't like Pansy Parkinsons at all.
Yeah, no, and again, when you're a girl in high school, you know a Pansy Parkinson. They are an archetype.
The worst. Hermione is just, at this point, not fazed by it. She just doesn't give a fuck. She's just like, cool, whatever, I don't care anymore. Which is further proving that she is the best person in the Harry Potter series.
Hermione is the best person in the Harry Potter series.
Another thing I would love is just a rewriting of the books from Hermione's perspective would be great.
I would not be against that.
It would be fun to see how many times she gets mad at people for being dumb. I think that would be the big thing. She was just like, ugh, Harry again.
I just love to read. Actually, you know what? A friend of mine who is a fantastic writer, when she just started writing fanfic, she did a series called, I think it's called Arabella, Queen of Witches.
Okay.
And it's Hermione's diary. Hermione, Queen of Witches, not Arabella. Her fanfic name is Arabella. So anyway, it's on the Sugar Quill website, and it is Hermione's perspective. It's like the first 5 books from Hermione's perspective.
That sounds great.
It's great. It is as close to what I think the canon would look like as can be.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So in the article, it mentions that Krum asked Hermione to go to Bulgaria with him to visit. And Hermione's super confused about how Rita got that information because when he asked, it was at the lake after his shark head situation went away.
Also, can we talk about the fact that like he's 18 or 17 or whatever, and I know the age of consent is lower in the UK than it is here, but she's 14. What are you inviting her to Bulgaria for? Oh, wow.
Maybe they're just going to hang out.
I mean, maybe it's all complete. I mean, yeah, sure. I'm sure it's completely, above board
maybe he's
and
just
stuff,
super innocent and doesn't know the implications of asking. But yeah, she's a lot younger than him.
It's just a big step for any relationship. Come visit me in another country.
Yeah,
she's 14.
But like, I'd be down. I'm sure Victor Krum probably has a dope house in Bulgaria.
I bet he does, Mr. Quidditch star. I bet he does.
Exactly. So,
he's Victor Krum. He lives in a wooden room. He lives in a wooden room. He's got spare cheese. To eat and, training manuals. That's all. That's Victor Krum's house, and it's cold.
Ron is more shocked that it wasn't a lie. He's disappointed that it wasn't a fabrication.
Yeah.
Which, I love Ron so much. He's so good.
Yeah.
There's a quote where it says, "I have never felt this way about anyone else." From Krum to Hermione. That's also something that was real and another thing that Rita somehow got, which is very strange. And I still don't have a guess for this, but I'm sure they'll reveal it later. But apparently this whole extensive conversation happened during class. So the squad gets in trouble. Like this whole discussion of the article and Krum and Rita is like while Potions class is going on, which is not the class to discuss gossip in because Snape hates you guys so much. Like, talk about this during lunch or Trelawney's class, not Potions, where the teacher has a vendetta against at least one of you.
Not their smartest move.
So points get taken away, obviously, and their seats are all moved so that they don't sit near each other. Then Snape has this kind of weird moment where he whispers to Harry, trying to like talk him down. And I'm really confused of when Snape turns into a good guy. Some of the spoilers I know exist. Like, I know Snape kills Dumbledore, but I don't know why. And I know Snape ends up being a good guy and saying always, but I don't know why.
Okay.
I'm really confused about, like, when Snape has this change of heart. Because if I didn't know this, just by what I know from the first 4 books, I would think Snape is the biggest asshole ever. Like, he picks on 11 to 14-year-old students. And like has grudges with them, and the whole tooth Hermione thing was like way over the top and should have got fired for that. And I just like, I'm really confused of when he's going to turn into a nice guy.
Snape is, so this is hotly contested still. I know, okay, so you know some things about Snape.
All I know is that he has a crush on Harry's mom.
Okay.
And he says always to her, but I don't know when or where or why.
Wow, you have a lot of information for someone who hasn't read these books.
It's all the stuff that just like gets posted on like a mug with always, or like the triangle with the circle in the middle, and like all this other stuff.
Right,
like,
the triangle.
I used Tumblr for a year, so I saw a bunch of GIFs. Like, it
so,
happens.
So the thing about Snape is that he may have redeeming qualities, but he is an absolutely reprehensible human being. There's no two ways about it. And there are, oh my God, there's so many instances, but he picked on Hermione's appearance.
That, I will never get over that. Like, you should have been fired immediately.
Well, today, probably he would have.
Oh,
but a teacher who says that to a student is indefensible. You're done on my book. So he's a complex person. He has redeeming qualities. He's definitely not done all evil things in his life, but he is a horrible person.
Yeah. I'm excited to see when he turns it around, but right now, not looking too good. So he then goes on to accuse Harry of being the one that was in his office, which makes his interaction of him being mean to Harry from 10 seconds ago make more sense. So he cites the gillyweed being gone and the boomstang skin, which you don't know is something that was stolen, but now you realize was stolen 2 books ago, comes from his office. So now it makes me think of like, was Dobby the one that was in there? Was it really Crouch? Did Crouch give it to Dobby? It makes it very confusing with this revelation. So Harry says he didn't do it, and Snape pulls out a truth serum potion.
Of course he does.
And says that it's under strict management by the Ministry, but tells Harry that his hand might slip and pour some into his pumpkin juice, which raises 5 issues of concern with me, and I've numbered them in my notes. 1, what the fuck?
Yep.
2, that's a crime.
Yep.
3, you're a teacher.
Yep.
4, another reason not to drink pumpkin juice.
Yep.
And 5, what the fuck?
Yeah, Snape. Let's talk about some questionable ethics. If you ever read the Divergent series, there's a whole debate about this inside the Divergent series. There's a serum that makes people tell the truth, but then they say it's coercion and they won't let you do it in some instances. And so truth isn't always like true facts don't make a true story all the time.
Yeah.
So it's totally unethical. It's terrible. It's gross. It's and then he's carrying it around in his robes. Yeah.
Just chilling there. So super weird. So Harry starts running through all the things that he would hate for the truth serum to reveal. And the number one thing he's most worried about is that people will find out he has a crush on Cho Chang, which is like,
well, he's
dude,
a 14-year-old boy.
I get you're a 14-year-old boy, but like, get your priorities together.
Truth.
Like,
Truth. Get your priorities together. But that would be, to Harry, like, being vulnerable. You know, showing humanity.
Like, shouldn't your number one concern be that, like, you know where Sirius Black is? Like, I feel like
does he think about that? I think he does think about that in the moment.
I don't know, because what I have in my notes is he's most worried about Cho Chang, not Sirius, not incriminating his friends, but his crush. So I don't know if he maybe thinks about it later and I didn't note it. But the first thing that comes to mind is not, my godfather, who is wanted by literally every person and everyone thinks he's guilty except for me and Dumbledore and Hermione. No one thinks this guy's innocent. No, what if people know that I have a crush on Cho Chang, who's described as being very attractive, so it like wouldn't be that embarrassing?
I don't know. He's
14-year-old boys, man, the worst. I mean, to his defense, I was the worst human. Like, of my ages, 13 to 14 was the worst iteration of Mike Schubert.
Well,
so
and I hate to even go back to, like,
sympathize.
he's a boy. He's a human who has feelings, and those feelings are of vulnerability scare him the most. So I get it, because it involves his emotions and not just, like, I get it, but yeah, Harry, get your priorities in order.
Yeah, that's the other thing is, like, I'm also 25 years old reading this, so of course I'm looking at this. Whereas if I was reading this at Harry's age of 14, I would probably be like, oh yeah, that would suck. I would probably totally sympathize with him. So anyway, Karkaroff comes in with an urgent matter. Harry spills some stuff on purpose so that he can stay after the bell and clean it up and over here, which is awesome.
Yeah, armadillo bile.
So nice. I'm loving some of the smooth moves Harry does.
Just nasty.
Karkaroff shows Snape his forearm, saying it's never been this clear since, and then Harry doesn't hear anything else. Obviously, this has to be the Dark Mark tattoo,
right,
which I knew was a thing going into it because people would draw them on them. Unfortunately, spoiler that I already knew. So then a Hogsmeade trip comes up. They bring the food that Sirius asked them to bring because he's just been eating scraps as a dog for the past however many months. So they go to the spot where Sirius said to meet them. They see him in dog form, and he leads them to the foot of a mountain. He leads them up the mountain into a cave, and there's Buckbeak, which is awesome. So this is Sirius's little hideout in the mountain, which makes me sad because I thought it was going to be like a tropical location because they described one of the birds he sent as being this like very colorful tropical bird, and I just had this picture of him like chilling on a beach drinking pina coladas out of coconuts.
I think he was for a while.
Okay, so maybe he used to be there.
He came
back.
back.
I was just really hoping for like him in a Hawaiian short sleeve shirt, button up like dad Hawaii shirt. I was in LA. I had this great picture in my brain that of course would not be true. Sirius says he's basically just been stealing food from Hogsmeade, posing as a stray dog, and stealing newspapers occasionally to stay informed, which is great. He then talks with Harry about the whole Barty Crouch situation, and Sirius is shocked about the sacking of the house elf, which happened in the very beginning of the book, because of Winky having the wand and using Harry's wand to make the Dark Mark, which is something that still hasn't been resolved, but I still think is very strange. I'm still holding on to the belief that they did the Dark Mark to scare the people that liked Voldemort away, because that's something that Papa Weasley brought up. So I'm still holding on to like it being a good use of the Dark Mark scare, but we'll see. This is just me trying to guess what happens. Sirius asks about the whole Crouch not showing up to his seat at the World Cup final, and he asks if Harry checked his pockets after the match. And Harry says he's not really sure. So now they're trying to put two and two together of like when he lost the wand, who might have taken it, etc. They move on to thinking that it could be Ludo Bagman, and Sirius agrees with me, of course, that trying to help Harry is a bit suspect and is a little weird.
Meanwhile, everybody's doing it.
Yeah, that is true. Like, everyone helping him out is strange. So Sirius then goes on to say that it's weird for Crouch to work so hard for the World Cup and the tournament and then not show up for the final.
Right.
This whole conversation with Sirius is just this back and forth of like, does Crouch look more guilty or does Bagman look more guilty? And at the time of reading this, I was on the fence. So this was like excruciating for me to read just because I was trying to decide for myself. And Sirius is not helping.
Yeah. So where are you falling right now?
I think that Bagman is afoot. And as we will discuss in this episode, we'll get to chapter 30 where like Bagman was put under trial and no one voted against him and he's super confident and cocky and stuff. Like the Bagman red flags go up and up. So I think that there's some situation in which like Bagman is enabling Voldemort to come back. And I don't know what it is, but I feel like the situation might be that Bagman is the guy who put Harry's name in the goblet so that Harry could be in the contest, so that Harry could use the port key and get teleported to Voldemort's lair or wherever where they end up killing Cedric Diggory instead. Like, I think that Bagman is trying to facilitate this, and I don't know what he has in for it or if Voldemort's paying him or whatever's going on. But my running theory is that Ludo Bagman is being suspect, and he's to blame.
I will be interested to find out what happens.
Yes, I've been painfully wrong on stuff before. For example, I had no idea that the time turner would be a thing. So my guess for Hermione going to multiple classes was she had a potion that split her up into like clones of herself. This was my all-star theory. So I'm not the best at guessing stuff. Sirius goes on to defend Crouch, saying that Crouch was next in line for the Minister of Magic role, and he gave Sirius no trial. And basically, he just goes on to say that Crouch is very anti-Voldemort. Sirius has a powerful explanation of how Voldemort gets his followers to do his bidding out of fear, and Crouch basically started calling the shots and allowed people to be violent against Voldemort's supporters. So a little bit of a, was this good, was this just, like, is this nice of him, or is Crouch going a little too hard? Crouch is the one who put Sirius in Azkaban, and we also learned that he put his own damn son in Azkaban for life.
Cold.
After figuring out that he was like doing some sort of Death Eater stuff, which is crazy. Sirius had no trial at all. The son did, but it was clear that Crouch despised his son. He then goes on to describe that his son went mad in jail and starved himself to death, which is apparently a very common thing because you just like lose the desire to live because all of your good memories and thoughts are just being deleted from you.
Yeah, could you imagine?
I can't.
That's one of the scariest things I've ever read in the Harry Potter books is that.
It's just like the worst form of depression forever.
It's torture.
Yeah.
It's torture. What they do to people to torture them. Mm-hmm. I think that is torture.
It's horrible. So, and this was only a year in, so he lasted a year and then died. Crouch's wife also died shortly after due to just general grief of the whole situation. And Crouch never came for his son's body. He's a cold-blooded human being.
Nice guy.
Yeah, seems great. Yeah, great at parties. When the news of all this came out, Crouch's popularity just took a big hit, and people figured that Crouch was just a bad dad, which might have led to the Death Eater stuff. So Fudge ended up getting the minister spot just because Crouch, his approval rating was just a 0, basically. Harry thinks that this explains why Crouch flipped shit on Winky so fast after being under the Dark Mark and the wand and all that kind of stuff. And Sirius then agrees with Moody's thought that Crouch is obsessed with catching dark wizards, and that's something that Moody had brought up earlier in the book. Sirius thinks that it's because Crouch would use it in hopes of getting his popularity back, and that's why he was like so adamant on trying to catch all the dark wizards. And then Sirius goes on to throw out Ron's theory, which makes me sad, that Crouch went into Snape's office to investigate Snape, because he says if that was true, Crouch would be at the judging to snoop on Snape.
A lot of information Sirius throws out here.
It's a super informative conversation where you just get like fact after fact after fact. It's just like, it's almost like reading a textbook, this thing, because it's just very informative. So Hermione tells Ron to back off of Snape. And Sirius is like, oh, everyone has a point. There's a lot of people being suspect. And he mentions that Snape is obsessed with the dark arts and learned a bunch of dark arts spells as a student, hung out with a crew who turned out to be Death Eaters, and the Lestranges are mentioned for the first time. Mm-hmm. So I've also known that Bellatrix Lestrange exists and is played by Helena Bonham Carter, but that's it.
Yeah, she's a much different character as played by Helena Bonham Carter than
in the book.
The Lestrange like it's described in the book. The kind of like decrepit beauty, like heavy-lidded, kind of that slow. You just get the idea that she's a little different than Helena Bonham Carter.
She's just Helena Bonham Carter playing herself, or at least playing
an amped-up version of herself. Yeah. But yeah.
So Avery Lestrange wormed his way out of being in trouble by saying that he was under the Imperius Curse, but Sirius says that he's still at large. Harry tells Sirius about the whole Karkaroff potion class thing, and Sirius says he has no idea what the forearm could be, which, how does he not know? Is it just a really well-hid secret that the Death Eaters have this, like, forearm mark, or is Sirius, like, lying to Harry?
That strikes me as crazy, too, because doesn't everybody know about the tattoo? Maybe in the first iteration of the war, they didn't know, and because Sirius has been in jail all this time, it's hard for him to understand the things that they have found out about Death Eaters since.
Okay, yeah.
So I sort of see it, but I thought the dark marks were kind of known at this point.
And at least from when I've seen people have them, like, they're big tattoos. Like, they're huge. Like, they take up your whole forearm.
Yeah, I think people go to pains to hide it. Like,
yeah,
that's
okay.
why Snape's not rocking a tank top anytime soon.
I mean, come on, you could. So.
Just saying.
So.
Forearms for days, that Snape.
Always just doing those forearm flexes.
Yeah.
So Sirius gives Moody a shout out, basically saying that he's like Batman, saying that he never kills unless he 100% has to. Sirius then tells Ron to ask Percy if he's seen Crouch recently and to look into the Bertha situation. Sirius mentions that Bertha had a great memory for gossip, and that's what she was known at for school, so maybe her death or disappearance could be because she's very talkative. That's a theory that he throws out there. Sirius tells the kids to go back to school, not to sneak off to talk to him anymore, write letters instead, and use the codename Snuffles when talking about him, which I think is great. It's like the least Sirius Black codename ever, which I think is perfect.
Yeah, it's great.
So the squad thinks that Percy would actually like to hear the mean stuff about Crouch because, quote, Percy loves rules. And that's the end of the chapter, which is the best way to end a chapter, honestly, is making fun of Percy.
loves rules.
So chapter 28, the madness of Mr. Crouch. Snape sends an owl to Percy asking if they have seen Crouch around recently. Then they give Dobby socks as a thank you for the gillyweed thing, and he's super happy about it. But then they're talking to Winky, who's an absolute mess. She's apparently been drinking 6 bottles of butterbeer a day, and there's a mention that butterbeer is slightly alcoholic, which makes me confused because 10-year-olds drink this. Like, is this okay?
Yeah, but this is tiny little animal. This is a tiny little creature.
The house elf. So, like
it's
it's little enough where it is not... Do they ever say how strong it is?
Drink butterbeer?
Do they? I assume they do.
If you drank butterbeer of the quantity of which Winky probably does, maybe you would get drunk.
Yeah, if you do the math, like 6 bottles for a house elf is probably...
13-year-olds drink it. It's like a very, very,
so that's excessive for her. Like, she should drink.
Like catnip for house elves.
So Harry tells Winky about Crouch being sick, and she's very concerned. She also mentions that she is helping Crouch with a super secret thing, and they just don't really mention it anymore, which is very common in the Harry Potter series. Mm-hmm. Hermione goes on another tangent about the whole freeing the house elves thing. I'm really excited to see if this goes anywhere because they keep like bringing it up and then it doesn't really gain any steam. I also don't remember it being in the movie at all. Was it?
No.
Okay.
No, they just got rid of that. I mean, Hermione puts up a defense, I think, at some point, but no, they just got rid of it. It was. Yeah.
So the house elves are super turned off by her tangent. They really enjoy working, which is something I'm continuously baffled by. Ron and Hermione continue to bicker about this throughout the whole day. Harry watches Hagrid then dig a ditch in his new garden with Madame Maxime, so maybe they're okay now and on good terms.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next day, breakfast is delicious, and Ron is pleasantly surprised because he thought
Breakfast is always delicious.
Oh, yes.
At Hogwarts.
Oh, yeah. They sound like they have amazing food situation. But Ron thinks that the elves were going to make them crappy food because of the whole Hermione thing, so he's very pleasantly surprised that the food is still good.
It's so problematic. The house elves, they're so problematic.
They are. It's super
weird. It's a long conversation.
Mm-hmm. Hermione says that she got a subscription to the Daily Prophet so that she can stop hearing about stuff from Slytherins in front of classrooms, which is great. I think it's an amazing justification for getting a subscription to the Nest.
You don't want to be standing in front of the classroom.
She's like, oh, fine, I'm going to read this bullshit myself. Like, I don't want to hear someone bicker about it.
Go straight to the source, Hermione.
So a ton of owls come in all for Hermione, and it's all hate mail saying that Harry can do better. And my question is like, who is writing this stuff that isn't at Hogwarts? Who has a crush on Harry that doesn't go to Hogwarts?
So many people. He's the boy who lived. He's the number one celebrity in their world. He's like the prince. He's like he is the magical mystical creature. And now that he's like growing up, it's like watching the royal family grow up. And once as they become of age, I think she's got this bang on the money that there are people out there with way too much time on their hands who like to imagine that they know this person just because they've read some things about him.
Are there other, like, I know there's other wizard schools in different countries, but like, what's the alternative if you don't go into Hogwarts and you're a wizard?
Well, there are other schools. If you're in the area of Hogwarts and you don't go to Hogwarts, you can be homeschooled.
Okay. I'm just trying to think of like where all these people would come from, like wizards that aren't at the school, but I guess if there's other schools or homeschool, I guess that would make up enough of it. So she gets all these letters, and one of them had bubotuber pus in it, and she gets it in her eye. This is like the equivalent of sending anthrax in a mail. Like, how is this okay? And
it's not.
How is Hogwarts like not regulating this? This school is the most poorly run institution ever.
Yes. How is Hogwarts not stopping an envelope full of bubotuber pus from getting on one of their students? That is a very valid,
I will never understand. So now they're back in Hagrid's class, and the creatures they're discussing today are nifflers. And you find nifflers in mines, and they like shiny things. So people use them in mine to find gold. Is this one of the things that was in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them? Like that guy that looks like a duck-billed platypus? Or is it a different beast?
Yeah, I think they're all in it.
Okay, because there was that...
All these beasts.
Because there was the guy, like, in the movie where he's, like, got the blue fur, and he kind of looks like a duck-billed platypus, and he keeps stealing all the jewels and stuff. Is he a niffler?
That is a niffler.
Oh, okay,
yes.
that is. Okay, cool.
Which is a very different indication of what the nifflers, as they're described in this book, but I like it.
Because in this book, they're, like, described kind of like as...
dogs.
Yeah, and then Hagrid, for this class, has set up a game for whose niffler can find the most gold, which seems like a weird game because you don't do anything. You just go. I guess it's like having a horse race where you're just like, all right, it's out of my hand now. Goyle tries to steal the gold from the nifflers afterward. Hagrid catches him and then says it's leprechaun gold anyway, which disappears after an hour. So which makes me think is like, at the Quidditch World Cup, Ron grabbed a bunch of gold when the leprechauns threw it and then gave it all to Harry. So it just disappeared like an hour later without him noticing?
Yeah, Ron mentions that.
Okay.
Ron mentions that in this chapter.
Okay.
He says to Harry, wait, you didn't even tell me. And Harry's like, and Harry didn't even notice. And it's a nice little note she makes of like, must be nice to not even notice when there's not money. To have so much money.
Now you're mentioning this, this sounds familiar, so I'm guessing that I probably took note about this. Hermione comes back from the hospital wing because of the bubotuber pus, and Hagrid says that he got the same hate mail after his Skeeter piece was posted. So again, we gotta have some sort of mailing system at Hogwarts that is keeping people safe. This is ridiculous.
I totally agree. At least weed out the bubotuber pus. At least if the envelope is like bulging and it's acidic smelling, like maybe...
Sure. I don't know, just
maybe
something. Or maybe, I don't know, use magic? Like,
yeah.
Like, is there anything in this
magical screening system?
Paper?
Just screen for bubotuber pus.
Gotta be something. Gotta be something. So Ron asks Harry why he never... Oh, yeah, okay, here it is. So Ron asks Harry why he never asked Ron for real gold at the World Cup since he paid in leprechaun gold. And Harry says, like, I didn't notice that it disappeared. And then, like you're saying, Ron gets sad and says, wow, that must be nice, which is super hard-hitting.
It is,
and super real.
It's a nice little note of privilege. It's a nice...
Yeah. So the hate mail keeps on coming in. And in the next class of Defense Against the Dark Arts, Hermione asks Moody if... Rita Skeeter has an invisibility cloak, and because he can see through them, and he's like, no, I haven't seen her around. She's trying to figure out how Rita hears all this stuff. Harry says that maybe she was bugged. Ron thinks literal bugs, and then Harry has to explain what bugging is to Ron,
Right.
which I think is fantastic. Hermione says, aren't you ever going to read Hogwarts a history? And Ron says, what's the point? You know it by heart. We can just ask you, which is, yes. Like, Ron is so good in this book. I love him.
Ron's the best.
He's so great. So Hermione conveniently mentions that electronic items conveniently don't work at Hogwarts because there is too much magic in the air, which is just so convenient. Not to like make fun of JK, but I feel like this is one of the things that like she wrote a couple books and then she was like, "Oh man, I didn't clarify like how this doesn't work." Electronics can't work in Hogwarts.
I do think wizards would like the internet. I think the internet is useful for wizards.
Yeah.
And they shouldn't be stopped from having it just because they're at Hogwarts.
Yeah, it would make all the scenes where they were trying to look up stuff in the library a lot faster. Like book 1 would be 150 pages shorter if they had
isn't
Google.
there like a search spell? Instead of paging through these books, Hermione could learn a search spell.
Yeah, there's no Control F. Like, there's got to be something.
Control F, indeed.
So Easter approaches, which schoolwork intensifies. Hedwig comes after Easter holiday with a package from the Weasley family. Percy writes a sassy letter saying that Crouch is taking a much-needed break because of all the work, and he sends me notes every day in his handwriting with instructions of what to do, so he's offended by them asking.
Yeah.
McGonagall tells Harry that he has to meet with the rest of the champions with her on the Quidditch field, which is currently under construction. You find out that they're making hedges, and Ludo Bagman is there, and he's super happy and excited about everything. He reveals that it's going to be a maze with obstacles and creatures, and your head start is dependent on who is in the lead. So this didn't happen for the second task, which they told him so much. Like, is there a reason why for this one he's being so descriptive, whereas before they were just like super vague about it? Like, is there any sort of reasoning for that?
No,
or is it
I
just
think because there's no surprise factor. They just like, this is going to be dependent on your skill. How good of a wizard are you? Period.
Yeah.
There's no real reason. Plus, anybody can see it with their eyes that it's growing.
Yeah,
so.
they can just be like, oh, look, a maze.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So Crumb takes Harry aside, asks him to go on a walk so they can talk. It's literally just Crumb asking if there's anything between Harry and Hermione, which I think is like a bit silly but makes sense for teenage boys. And while they're in the forest, they hear something, and it's Crouch, who's looking rough. Mm-hmm. He's like talking to no one, like no one's there. But it's as if he's having a conversation in the past because he's talking to like quote unquote Percy, who he keeps calling Weatherby. It's this weird thing where he's like having a conversation that had to have happened months ago because it's about sending a letter to the schools about the Triwizard Tournament. So it's super interesting, and I don't know what is going on. Like, I have no guess. I have no idea what's happening.
I can't tell you.
Yeah, please don't. He snaps out of it momentarily. His eyes like roll around all crazy, and then he like struggles to get the words out to Harry that he's like, I gotta see Dumbledore. I've done something stupid. He says that he's escaped, but he cries about how Bertha and his son were all his fault, and that he helped make the Dark Lord stronger. So it's super crazy and like out of nowhere and like a big dramatic twist of sorts. So Harry runs to get Dumbledore, tries and fails at the gargoyle password, and he runs into Snape. Snape says Dumbledore is busy and is grinning because Harry can't get to what he wants. And it's like, Snape, there are bigger stakes in hand than your,
come on, Snape.
Yeah, than your like gripe with a 10-year-old boy. Yeah. Come on, get it together.
No, Snape is not a good, like he
not a good person.
He does some good things. Not a good person.
So Dumbledore finally comes out. Harry tells him what's going on, and they go back to where Crouch is. When they finally get there, there's an unconscious Victor Crumb and no Crouch. So Dumbledore uses Enervit, which wakes up Crumb, and he says Crouch attacked me and then ran away. Hagrid and Moody then show up, and Dumbledore sends Hagrid to get Karkaroff and Moody to try to find Crouch because it's essential, which, again, very ominous word choice by Dumbledore here. Karkaroff is asking what's going on because he's like, how has my student just been beat over the head? He goes on a whole little tirade about how like this is cheating for the Triwizard Tournament. But it's like, Karkaroff, your bigger concern should be like the health and safety of your student, not whether or not this is fair for a contest that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Everyone's priorities are so out of whack here.
That's true.
So he spits at Dumbledore's feet, and Hagrid grabs him by the fur coat and slams him into a tree. Fuck yes, Hagrid. Mm-hmm. This is great. Dumbledore sternly tells Hagrid to take Harry back to the castle and tells Harry not to send any owls that you're going to send, which is like a little weird. And then you learn later on it's because Dumbledore's also been writing letters to Sirius.
Right.
So that makes sense later on. And then the chapter ends, like every chapter does, with Harry going back to the castle to tell Hermione and Ron what happened. And then chapter 29, the dream. So Hermione says that the two options are A, Crouch either attacked Krum, or B, someone attacked both Krum and Crouch and then took Crouch away. Ron thinks that it's Crouch attacking Krum and then running away, which means it's definitely not that. So it's gotta be somebody else came in and attacked both of them, because Ron is never right about anything. But I'm so intrigued of this Ron is a seer thing. This makes me want to finish the book so much faster.
Yeah. I mean, not everything Ron says, but Ron does have a way of just hitting it on the nose.
Ron throws out some more bogus theories, and then Harry goes straight to Sirius. He mentions that when Crouch was warning about Voldemort, he seemed the most sane, and when he was doing the stuff from the past, it seemed super weird and like he was under some sort of spell. Harry is upset about the whole Snape holding him up thing, which leads Ron to now accuse Snape of being guilty, of course. And then the squad overhears Fred and George talking about, quote, if you put it in writing, that will be blackmail, as they're entering the owlery, which is super suspect. The twins have been really suspect this whole book, ever since they made an oddly specific bet about the World Cup outcome and bet the equivalent of like $430 on this outcome.
Yeah.
So they've been like super sketchy. I'm very intrigued to see what's going on with them. They have this great conversation where it'll be like one person from each of the sides saying something. So at the same time, they say, what are you doing sending a letter at this time, ? And it's like Hermione and Fred said this, then George and Ron, and then like Harry and Fred. It's just this great thing. And I hope they did it in the movie, because that just seems like it would be really funny.
I can't tell you.
So Ron notes that they've been obsessed with making money lately. They're trying to prep for their joke shop, which I really hope happens. Squad then meets up with Moody, and he says that he never found Crouch when they went to look for him. Says he wasn't on the grounds, and Ron thinks, oh, maybe he disapparated. And Hermione's like, come on, no one can use disapparation.
Does no one listen to me ever?
She's been saying this throughout the book. Everyone keeps thinking this is a thing. It's not a thing. It can't happen. Hermione proposed that maybe someone made him leave. And Ron says, yeah, maybe someone put him on a broom and then flew the broom away. Which is absolutely genius, and I hope is the real thing. Like, it's the most far-fetched thing ever, but if it's true, it would be so great. It'd be fantastic. Moody says that he's going to go find him, tells Hermione and Ron to watch Harry's back, and that Harry should focus on the third task instead of getting caught up in all of this. He warns that there's someone dangerous on the grounds who clearly didn't want Dumbledore to see Crouch. So, again, furthering the theory that it's probably like a third person at play here.
No, I can't comment.
Okay. So Harry got a letter from Sirius, which basically gives the same advice of Moody, that like there's probably someone there, it's super sketchy, and he says just like hang out with your friends, stay in the tower, don't go snooping about. Like, don't worry about this. So they're on the same page. But Harry then gets pissy, and he's like, who does he think he is to tell me what to do after all the stuff he pulled as a kid? And Hermione says exactly what I'm thinking. It's like, you idiot, he's just looking out for you. Who cares if he's lived a bad life before?
Right.
That's how giving advice works.
Right. Yeah, no, Hermione, voice of reason all the time.
Always. Harry is just, again, being very pissy, and he's trying to reason that, like, I'm not being attacked, so I must not be the target. And it's like, that's not how the world works.
That's not how it works.
And Hermione goes on to point out that they want it to look like an accident, so obviously they're going to save your death for the task, which Hermione, again, always the best person in the book, always will be. Just the greatest person in the series.
Yeah, she's the best.
So Harry starts practicing stunning spells on the squad, who sets up like a bunch of pillows and cushions in them for them to like fall back in, which I think is just a fun little thing. They move on to some hexes, like one called Impegment, which slows down people, and other stuff like that. And
yeah, what's nice about this is that like Harry finally starts to learn a lot of magic.
Yeah, it's good. It makes me like wish that there was kind of like an 80s montage of him learning spells and stuff, which I'm always pushing for in these.
Right.
Like, just dramatic music and cuts. It'd be so good. Like Kevin Bacon in Footloose situation. Like, we need that.
Totally. 80s montage time.
So Ron and Harry then have to go to divination class. They're studying the effects on Mars, and they turn off the lights. Harry falls asleep, and he has this dream where he goes into the Riddle House, and it's basically chapter 1, but in dream form. So it's all the same stuff that happened, but it goes on a little farther, and Voldemort apologizes to Nagini that he was going to feed Wormtail to him, which is ridiculous, and then he mentions that like he's going to feed Harry to him.
Yeah.
Which is
really gross.
What is going on? What's happening right now? After he tells this to the snake/wormtail, he puts Pettigrew in a Crucio curse as a punishment for not realizing that Frank, the gardener, was in the room, and then Ron wakes up Harry. Apparently, Harry was rolling around on the floor, clutching his scar, and this makes Trelawney happy, which, fuck Trelawney.
Yeah.
She is the worst.
Yeah.
When I read book 2, I was like, no one will ever be worse than Gilderoy Lockhart. And then Professor Trelawney came around.
Yeah, Trelawney, well, she's not, I mean, there are worse. There are worse. But she just feeds on the drama. She doesn't care that he's in pain. She just feeds on it.
I don't know. The fact that she likes it and is, excited by it.
It's morbid.
It's super weird, and I'm not a fan. So Harry pretends that he's going to go to the hospital wing for a headache cure, but instead goes straight to Dumbledore's office.
AKA Harry's finally learned what to do in these situations.
Yeah, just lie to the inferior teachers, which is what he did for Lockhart before. So it's a very viable strategy. It's just lie to the incompetent teachers and go to Dumbledore or McGonagall. Always a good strategy. So there's this great scene where the previous password for the gargoyle was lemon sherbet. So he just starts guessing random candies. And he lists off 12 until it's cockroach cluster. And then it opens. And Harry has this great aside where even though he's stressed and worrying, he has a moment where he goes, Dumbledore likes cockroach clusters, which I just found to be hilarious. So he overhears this meeting with Dumbledore. It's Dumbledore, Moody, and Fudge. Fudge basically doesn't suspect foul play for the Bertha or Barty Crouch situation, which further confirms gotta be foul play because Fudge doesn't know anything. And then you learn Fudge is a little bit racist because he suspects Madame Maxime. He's like, well, she's a giant.
Yeah, well, Fudge is of the world that he represents, which is not really great about people who are not of a certain mold. So yeah, Fudge is definitely a little bit racist.
Yeah. He asks Dumbledore, don't you know what she is? And Dumbledore is a great responser who says, an able headmistress and a wonderful dancer. Dumbledore's such a saint.
Exactly.
Moody then reveals to Dumbledore that Harry's on the other side of the door, so they let him in. Now, we're getting into Chapter 30, the Pensive. Basically, Fudge tries to get Harry to believe his theory. Harry shoots it down, which is great to see a 14-year-old kid debunk the theory of the Minister of Magic.
Yeah, totally.
The adults leave to go inspect the grounds, try to figure out what's going on. Dumbledore tells Harry to stay and wait, which means Harry's going to get into some hijinks. And he does by accidentally blue-skidooing into Dumbledore's memory. So it's this big basin with this silvery liquid that's all flowing through it. And Harry just tries to look closely into it, but his nose accidentally touches it, and then he is teleported in.
Yes.
And it's very Christmas Carol-y, where stuff is happening, but no one is paying attention to him. And Harry...
The Pensive is great. The Pensive is truth. The magic of the Pensive is that it recreates something exactly. It takes away the subjectivity of memory.
Yeah.
So it's really cool. I really want one so badly.
Oh, it would be great. I would love it. Of all the cool things in Harry Potter world, I feel the top 2 came from this book. Number 1 for me is Omni Oculars. I feel that would be the coolest thing ever.
Yes.
And then also this memory thing, so I would not forget stuff. It'd be so good. Especially when I was in school. Oh, that would have been great in college. Just every lesson, just put it in there. Studying would have been a breeze. So he ends up on a bench next to Dumbledore. No one can hear him or see him. And he sees this chair that has a bunch of chains on it. And he's very confused. This whole room is kind of dungeon-y. It's dark. And all of the chairs are faced at this chair with the chains. It's still an old Dumbledore, but not as old, so you know that it's recent, but not necessarily super recent. As he's in there and seeing people and all that, 2 Dementors come in, bringing in a prisoner, and it's Karkaroff, which is, oh man, obviously we knew this, but it's crazy to see. So he gets put in the chair, and when he does, the chains go all up his arm, and he says that he's going to reveal some information about Death Eaters to try to, lighten his sentence, which I think it's whoa, Karkaroff's a snitch. What a loser. Come on. No one likes a rat.
Yeah, but the first person to snitch is the one who doesn't get the sentence. That's, so he's not an idiot. There's that.
Yep. Moody is also there, sitting next to Dumbledore. And he says to Dumbledore, like, why don't we just let him say the names and then throw him back to the Dementors?
Right.
Which, a great strategy. And Dumbledore mentions that he doesn't think that it's a good idea that the Ministry is using Dementors, and it's kind of a multiple sentence tirade, which makes me think this is foreshadowing that the Dementors are going to become bad guys later on. Like, I don't know if this is actually something that would happen, but I would not be surprised if Voldemort somehow turns them into bad guys.
I think they're just bad guys.
I mean, they're horrible. Yeah.
They're just bad. Like, they're just bad. And so it's not, like, you don't have to turn them. They're manifestations of something really dark and terrible. So
Yeah.
I don't know how much you have to do to Dementors to make them bad.
That's true. So Karkaroff tries to give out a bunch of names of people, like Antonin Dolohov, who's already been apprehended, Evan Rossier, who said is already dead, Travers and Mulciber, who they already have, but then he says Rockwood, and everyone's like, oh, like no one knew that. They don't really go into it, but everyone freaked out. So it's Augustus Rockwood of the Department of Mysteries. I don't know if he's going to become important later on, but that's the person that they didn't know about. So Crouch is about to send him back to Azkaban when Karkaroff was like, wait, like I have a really good one this time. And then I was like, oh, he's going to say Snape, isn't he? And then he does say Snape.
Yeah.
And then Crouch is like, Snape's already been cleared by this council when Dumbledore vouched for him. Dumbledore stands up and he's like, yes, Snape was a Death Eater, but he turned good before Voldemort's downfall and became a spy on our behalf at, quote, a great personal risk to himself. So Snape's getting some good points, which is nice. And Dumbledore clearly has like this profound reason to vouch for him. Crouch ends the session, sends Karkaroff back, and then it kind of dissolves and turns into another memory. Same room, but like different seats, and people look a little bit different. So Harry understands it's a new thing. And when he does, it's Ludo Bagman on trial. And of course, I'm like, yes, I knew it was Ludo Bagman.
Yeah.
I'm super happy about this. But then everyone's like really nice to him. And I'm like, oh no, like maybe it's not Ludo Bagman. It says it's Ludo at the height of his Quidditch playing fitness, which I didn't know was a thing. Either they didn't say it or I missed it. But you learn that Ludo Bagman is like the star Quidditch player on the English national team. And everybody loves him.
He was a big deal. Former glory.
Crazy. So he's there. It's like basically if like David Beckham was on trial and everyone's just like, oh my God, Ludo Bagman.
Exactly.
You're so
Or Victor
dreamy.
Crumb was on trial.
Oh, true. So he's there to answer to charges with Death Eaters. He's being accused of passing along information to Death Eaters. So not necessarily being one, but like enabling them. And Harry is absolutely shocked. He's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe Bagman would ever be accused, which in my mind solidifies that it's definitely Ludo Bagman because Harry and Ron are always wrong, so it's got to be him.
Harry and Ron are pretty frequently wrong. This is true.
So Crouch starts to say that he's going to imprison Bagman for this crime, but then he puts it to a vote and literally no one votes for him that he's guilty. Unanimous innocent, which I found shocking that not even Dumbledore or anyone else voted. But the one thing I didn't get is everyone in attendance the jury, or is there a separate jury?
I don't know either.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's the Wizengamot. I think that is his jury, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, it made it seem like that. That memory fades away, but the last thing that happens is like this one lady gets up and you think she's going to like protest something, but then she's like, we just wanted to congratulate Mr. Bagman for his performance against Turkey. It's like, okay, he's great at this poorly designed sport, so now we're giving him a pass? Like, come on. And Crouch is very upset about it. So then, again, the whole memory dissolve thing in third memory. And then you get into this super, like, deep, depressing memory. And I switched between the book and the audiobook, depending on if I'm, like, on lunch break at work or cleaning or whatever. Right. And I did this one with the audiobook. It's the Jim Dale one. And normally I don't like his reading of it because his voices are, like, a bit too over the top. But I have to give him credit because the voice he did for Ludo Bagman's son was like very good acting and like very much makes him sound like a distraught kid that is getting imprisoned.
Ludo Bagman's son or
sorry,
Barty
Barty Crouch's son. Yeah. Like he does a very good job of that and I like felt very emotional. So shout out to Jim Dale. I've made fun of you before, but you did a very compelling job as Barty Crouch's son here. Basically, 6 Dementors walk in with 4 people that are all chained in. It's a large man, a scared skinny man, a, quote, confident-looking girl with heavy-lidded eyes, which has to be Bellatrix, even though they don't say it, and then a scared teenager, which has to be Crouch's kid. And then later on, you learn that it is Crouch's kid. So the crime
that they are putting on charge for is for capturing Frank Longbottom, who's an Auror, which is like, holy shit, like, Neville has cool parents? What the like,
Yeah.
It's very shocking because they keep painting Neville as this loser, but his parents are apparently awesome. The crime is that they captured him, and then they give his wife and him the Cruciatus Curse to try to get information out of them for Voldemort's whereabouts. So it's believed that they're trying to get Voldemort back to power, and that the sentence that they're getting is for a life sentence. Now, this is a 180 of the previous thing because they're unanimously found to be guilty.
Right.
And then it gets into this weird thing where his kid is screaming like, I'm your son, how can you do this? And then Crouch is like, you are no son of mine, which is like super cold-blooded. And
super cold-blooded.
Ridiculous. Then Dumbledore goes into the memory as well and it's like, hey, Harry, like, let's go out of here. And then the two of them have a little life talk. And by life talk, it's basically just Harry asking Dumbledore every question, which is a nice change of pace for Harry. Like we mentioned earlier, like he's finally just cuts all the bullshit and just asks Dumbledore every question he's thinking about.
Yeah. But it is a nice, it's nice to get a big chunk of like the history and see what happened in the First Wizarding War and see the kind of atmosphere that resulted in these things. There's just so many things I can't comment on to you right now. So I want to, and I'm interested to hear you after you finish this book.
Yeah, no, it's exciting. It was like a really good bunch of chapters, but you're right. I feel like it's a lot of like setup for potential stuff I'm going to learn in like 2 to 3 chapters. So you can't say too much. So basically you learn that this thing is called the Pensive. He does the thing where he takes the memory out of his brain and puts it in. So each memory is like that silvery kind of liquid in there. And then Dumbledore's like, oh, when you came in, you wanted to tell me something. What was it? And Harry just reveals the dream that he had in divination class.
Right.
But while he's saying this, there's this great moment where he's like, I was in divination class and I fell asleep. And then he like gasps. He's like, oh no, I just admitted I fell asleep in class. I think I'm going to get in trouble. And then Dumbledore just goes, quite understandable.
Quite reasonable. Quite understandable.
So good.
I mean, Dumbledore knows what's up. Dumbledore was a student once.
And he keeps making fun of Trelawney, which is great. I love that that's a running theme. I hope it continues to happen. Anytime
there's so much for you to discover. There's so much for you to discover.
Oh, I'm so excited. So Harry just kind of like tells him everything that's going on. Dumbledore reveals that he's also been writing letters to Sirius, so that makes a lot of things make sense. And then Harry's like, why does my scar hurt if Voldemort isn't here? Dumbledore says his theory is that his scar hurts when Voldemort is either near or when Voldemort feels a supreme amount of hatred, which is deep and scary. Goes on to say that like the scar binds them because it was of the failed curse, blah, blah, blah. He tells Harry like, yeah, that dream you had probably was like a real event that happened. Like, I don't think it's just a fabrication. And they both wonder like, how did he get like some sort of body form? And Dumbledore doesn't know, which is concerning. Like anytime Dumbledore doesn't know the answer to something, it's very scary.
This is not a spoiler, but on Pottercast, we haven't even mentioned the Pottercast. It's my
right.
Harry
Jeez.
Potter podcast. We talk, but John has a theory on how this happened. And when J.K. Rowling was on the show, she said that there are 2 things that she's never described.
Okay.
Because they're too horrible. They're too horrible to put in print, says the woman who wrote Harry Potter.
Wow.
There's lots of horrible things in Harry Potter.
Yeah, there is.
It opens on a double murder. Like, this is not play.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah.
One is how you make a Horcrux. Like the actual process you go through.
Yeah.
And the other is how Voldemort achieved his baby form, this form that he's in. Mm-hmm. And John has a theory. Do you want to hear it?
I'm assuming it has something to do with Bertha Jorkins. I would love to hear the theory. I'm assuming it's not spoilery.
He thinks that it is he possessed an unborn child.
Whoa!
Tell me that doesn't sound exactly like what happened.
Whoa!
And got fed with snake venom.
So, like, potentially, like, Bertha was pregnant and...
Who knows who was pregnant? Like, it could have been Bertha. He could have impregnated her on purpose.
That's a really good one.
It could have been anyone. It could have been a muggle.
Oh, my God.
But it just, ever since John said that, I was like, yes, that's what happened.
That's so good.
Right?
That is so good and totally backs up the claim of JK that it's too horrible to write.
Yeah, that she doesn't want to put that in.
That is.
Yeah. I completely.
Oh, wow.
How you make a Horcrux, that's another one. I don't even want to know.
I also don't really know. I know that Horcruxes are like evil, but that's it. So I love that I don't know.
I can't go
what
into
those
more
are.
detail until book 6. So.
Okay. Maybe we'll talk again later when I know more things.
Later on.
So after wondering about the body thing, Harry asks Dumbledore, he's like, do you think Voldemort is getting stronger? And Dumbledore says, yeah, I suspect so, because the last time he rose to power, a bunch of people disappeared, and now that's happening again. So just not necessarily happy vibes from Dumbledore. He's not very optimistic about the situation.
No.
He mentions that, they go on to talk about the Longbottoms, saying that they're in a mental hospital, which sucks. They don't recognize Neville, which sucks. And
it's one of the saddest things in the books.
Super, super sad. And he says that the attacks on them raised so much fury because everybody liked the Longbottoms and Voldemort had just fallen, so people were scared. So that's what led to such a harsh sentence and not necessarily a thorough thing. And that's why Harry's like, oh, so maybe Barty Crouch's son didn't do it. And Dumbledore's kind of like, yeah, maybe he didn't, but we don't know. Which is, again, like so many sad things, gut-wrenching kind of stuff, all going on because of these memories. So then Harry asks about Bagman. Dumbledore says he's never been accused since. Same thing with Snape. And then finally, he asks Dumbledore, like, what made you vouch for Snape? Like, what was so clear to you that he was good? And Dumbledore just goes, that's private. And then Harry gets these intense vibes that Dumbledore wants him to leave. So he's like, finds an excuse to leave. Dumbledore says, don't mention anything about the Longbottoms. Like, if Neville wants to talk about his parents, Neville should do that on his own. And just before he goes out the door, he says, hey, by the way, good luck on the third task. So at least it ends on a somewhat nice little note. But that's the end of chapter 30.
Don't you get the idea at that moment that Dumbledore is just like starting to become overwhelmed with what's going on?
It really is. It would just be one thing if Dumbledore was just the headmaster of Hogwarts and just dealing with that. But like on top of that, it's like every year he has to deal with saving the world, basically. Can't be an easy task.
No, definitely not. And when it's done, you'll have a lot more thoughts on Dumbledore. I can't say it.
Okay, I'm excited. I already love him. I think he's perfect. And the fact that he's becoming sassier in books 3 and 4 just makes me love him even more. So I'm pretty high on Dumbledore stock. But yeah, that's the end of the chapter, and that's the end of what we're talking about for this episode. So Melissa, thank you so much for being a part of this.
Thank you for having me.
No, this was great. I'm very glad to have you on. I'm glad we got to make this work. Have you on for a fun, like, meaty section of the book. Learned a bunch of fun facts. It was great. It's awesome. I'm so glad you're on this. So I guess all of the cons to plug.
All of the cons.
Leaky
Pottercast.
Con.
The Leaky Cauldron.
Yeah,
Leaky Con.
we didn't talk about Pottercast at all in the last episode. So let's make that the little outro here. Like,
sure.
What's Pottercast? Describe
Harry
it to the people.
Potter Podcast, one of the very first to ever be online.
Yeah.
I think it was. It's been going since 2004. We are still going strong.
Wow.
It's amazing. We still have things to talk about.
I was going to say, that's a lot.
Incredible. 2005. It's our 12th year.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's crazy. And we had a couple of years in there where we didn't do a lot because things had kind of cooled off in the Harry Potter world. And then literally the week after we said, this is the last Pottercast, J.K. Rowling wrote another book. So...
Was it another Harry Potter one, or is this
No, it was the Galbraith
one?
series. So we came back to talk about that, and then there was movies and plays and script books, and
now it's all coming back.
It's never going away. So we're very excited about that. And so we talk all the news. We talk about the canon in general. You'll be hard pressed to find something we haven't talked about on this show, but we love it. We love it.
That's awesome. So yeah, everyone check out Pottercast if you want a more informed Harry Potter podcast than me poking fun at stuff and ranting about
definite
Quidditch.
Spoilers.
Spoiler ridden, but good times. Oh man, well again, thank you so much for being a part of this was great. And listeners, thanks for listening, and until next time, as they say in Hogwarts, wizard on.
Yeah, do that.
Potterless was created by Mike Schubert, it is hosted by Mike Schubert, it is edited by Mike Schubert, it is produced by Mike Schubert, as well as Leanne Davis, Griffin Meckelberg, Aaron Johnson, Erica and Calvin Bauer, Michael Vanderslice, and Sadie Bear, web design by Kelly Beckman, and the music is by Bettina Campamanes. Thank you guys so much for listening. You can find us at facebook.com/Potterless, Twitterless @PotterlessPod, and Instagram @PotterlessPodcast, as well as our new website, PotterlessPodcast.com. You can find us on any of your preferred podcasting app, and if you want to leave us a rating and review on iTunes, that helps us so much. It really does help people find the podcast, which is fantastic. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for listening, and until next time, wizard on.